What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Payne. Welcome back to another Omniheroes video. Okay guys, we have talked about a few tier lists now and a few other items regarding relics, which ones are the top ones. We've talked about some of the top units. One thing I do want to note though, this is very important, and I forgot to probably do this at first. I probably should have done this as the first thing, and that is talk about which synergies you want to start with from top to bottom, being the worst to the best. Let's go from the bottom to the top actually, because I noticed a lot of you guys are interested in certain synergies, but also want to know how viable these synergies are for early and in mid game, right? So let's talk a little bit about that and explain to you guys why these synergies are going to be best for early, mid to end game. We're going to break all of them down. First off, I want to say this though. No matter what synergy you go with, just remember they're all viable. Where they're going to struggle is in certain events and mostly in PvP, right? So for example, take a look here. If you have Celestial Trials, right? Right over here. Let's see, go to Wilderness. When you start doing this, you're going to need to have various different factions and various different setups to get going, right? Like you can't just have one team and do it all. Like look, this one needs Avengers, and then you need to have evil unities, so Shadow War and Deviants. You're going to need strikers, etc. So there's going to be a lot of different content out there that's going to require you to have various different setups. So don't worry too much about it. Early game especially, you can start off and do anything. Now early game though, the most powerful synergy out of all of these is going to be right over here, the Valianters. Now the reason behind that is because they're all very physically dominating. Themis here pretty much can one-shot every party herself. The moment she does Final Slash and she kills an opponent, she one-shots pretty much everything. So that will include, so let's talk about early game. Early game is probably from level 1 to level 45. Let's go to 45, okay? So this is going to be like your first team to develop. So in the beginning, the Valianters and Ethereals are very, very close. The Valianters are just a slight bit better in the beginning because of the group that they have set up. Like Atropos here gives everybody physical damage and does healing. Elune gives everybody physical abilities as well. Themis pretty much scales off of attack and physical damage. And then you have a couple other ones like Diane here who does a couple extra things, right? So overall, and you have Ashlyn who can heal. So overall, the Valianters in the beginning are very dominant. Ethereals are one step behind. So this will be number 1, early game. Number 2 will be these guys here. The reason why they're just a tad bit behind is you're just a little under geared early on, and your crit and crit damage aren't as high as you will later. And you'll see these guys will scale super high eventually and will be the top team hands down for middle and end game. So Valianters for sure, early game. Ethereals will be second. So note that 1, 2. The third one will actually be the Mystifiers. Mystifiers here early game do really, really well because of their corrosive damage and their stacking of corrosive. Now that does really well at the start, but these guys unfortunately start to drop off a little bit as time goes on because corrosive does less damage, it doesn't affect shield as much, etc. Right? There's a lot of reasoning why behind corrosive. It's just not as bursty as some of the other comps, but it does really well. I'd say early to even mid game, it's not bad. All right. Avengers is actually one of the worst in the beginning because it just almost does no damage. It's all about survivability. You guys can see here most of their units are healers or tanks, and Avengers are all about this, right? They're all about gaining a chance to be revived, restoring HP, revival, restoring HP, etc., right? For a little while, this is not a big deal, but once you get to the 5 here, where it increases damage boost of revived allies by 250% for 3 rounds, it becomes extremely daunting. So these guys are one of the worst in the beginning because they're the hardest to get, they're the hardest to play with. They require quite a few of the demons and angels, but late game they become absolutely insanely good. So it would go Valianters early to mid game, Ethereals, let's say 1 and 2, okay? And then mid game it goes 1 and 1, so either or is fine. Mystifiers, I'd say, is 3 for early game and stays 3 for middle game. And then it becomes Avengers for 4. Okay? This is early and mid game. And then 5 would be Glorians. Now, Glorians are unique in a sense that they have a good combination of everything. And their setup is fairly nice. So at the start, applies 2 stack of attack boost on 3 allies with the highest attacks for 3 rounds. At the start of the battle, applies 2 defense reductions on 3 of the 3 enemies with the highest attack. So they actually have a really good setup to help you do damage, whether you're mages or if you're physical. So having 2 Glorians on a team with Valianters is actually a pretty good start because they do give them the stack of attack up to 3 of the allies, and most of the time the Valianters or Ethereals have the highest units. So you want to have 2 of these guys around at the minimum. If you have 3 of them, it's even better. It gives all of the allies the attack boost, and then does damage reduction to all of the enemies. And at the start of the battle, the ally receives 100% control immunity, so you can't be controlled, stunned, etc. Right? It's all there. Now, if you start going to 4, this is where they kind of, in my opinion, drop until you get some of the demons and angels. So you have to have Gwen. You need to have Thalanis. Nawe is nice to have, obviously. So in order to really thrive here, Marina is also good. You really need to have the angels and demons. So these guys kind of stay low tier fairly often because of the amount of demons and angels required to make them work. Okay, so these guys would be number 5. Okay, and then the last one would be the Doomsdays. Unfortunately, these guys are they're not very good in my opinion. They don't have too much to offer. They're not bad either though, but the problem with these guys, okay, they reflect damage, which is nice, but the reflect damage has to be super high. If you're fighting against people with shields, they protect themselves. If you're fighting against people with high heal rate, they can heal themselves up. So I find Doomsdayers, unfortunately, to be probably the worst of the factions, at least early, mid to end game. Like completely throughout, they're pretty much the same. So these guys are unfortunately going to be probably the worst. If you've been building Doomsdayers, they're going to serve you okay in some of the Celestial stuff, and they may be okay for Yggdrasil's Supremacy because you may have bonuses, but outside of that, they're probably the worst ones. Okay, so what happens at end game? So we talked about early to mid, right? What happens at end? Who is the top at end? So the top at the end is actually going to end up being Ethereals, because at that point you're going to have everything unlocked. You're going to have all your relics. You're going to have all your crit damage. You're going to have all your crit. You're going to have all your burst, all your weapons, runes, etc. Right? They're going to be the top DPS in the game by far. By far. Now they are ruled by a lot of whales, so keep that in mind, but they are going to be the best one. Now to counter them, the Avengers actually take over the spot for, I'd say, second best, because they can revive, they get insane damage boost, they can heal themselves up really well, they scale off of healing onto their attack. So these guys would be number 2. The Valianters would be number 3 for endgame. The Glorians would be number 4. Where are they? Right there. Because of the stack of attack they give, plus you can actually combine them with others. Mystifiers drop quite a bit, unfortunately, to number 5, only because the corrosiveness at that point isn't bursting enough and it doesn't do enough damage. They themselves don't do enough damage without corrosive, and at that point their HP scale is so high, there's so many shields there, there's so many ways to avoid it, that it becomes less and less popular and less effective, okay? And then lastly, of course, is Doomsdayers, guys. They will continue to be in the lowest rung section of the game, unfortunately. So if you are planning to do beginning of the game, you're fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's say that's even the same in the middle. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But end game, when everything opens up, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, guys. Hope that helped you out. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. But please, new players, veteran players, start transitioning over to the better teams now. It's never too late. And start focusing on the ones that will serve you best in end game. If you are still building your main team and that's what you want to focus on, by all means, play however you like. I'm just giving you guys the information that's been provided from the test servers, from other players, as well as people who have tested, and myself. These are going to be your best long-term teams, synergies for a very long time. All right, guys, Payne, I'll talk to you guys in the next one.